Welcome, everyone. My name is Jenny Parks, and I'm the Vice President of Policy and Research at the Midwest Higher Education Compact. Thank you for joining us today. We have one of our other Compact colleagues here today, and her partner researcher, also from MHEC state of North Dakota. We will do those introductions in a few minutes. Just to make sure you're in the right place, this is a webinar we are presenting on behalf of the National Consortium of Open Educational Resources, otherwise known as NCOER. That is a collaboration of the 4 regional compacts to come together and build a scaffold and a capacity network for OER implementation across the nation. Today, you're going to hear the first piece of peer-reviewed research to come out of this collaboration. It's called Understanding Student Experiences of Renewable and Traditional Assignments. It's very, very exciting. I wanted to draw your attention to just a few logistical and housekeeping things. First of all, we are recording this webinar, and we will post it to our website and NEBHE's website and make it available. Second of all, if you do have questions, please use the Q&A section of Zoom, not the chat, please. I'll be monitoring those questions, as will my colleague, Mary Robertson, and we'll make sure to answer things that are easily answered in writing, and then we'll make sure to verbally convey those questions to our presenters. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, you will receive a short survey, and we just please take some time to complete it. It lets us know how we're doing and what we can do better to meet your needs as a compact and as some folks who are really interested in furthering the cause of open education and open educational resources. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over now to my colleague, who is just wonderful and full of great ideas and such an inspiration to me in all that she does up in our Northeastern Compact, NEBHE. I'm turning it over to Lindsey Gwozdz and Virginia Clinton-Lisell. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you so much to MHEC for sponsoring this webinar on behalf of NCOER. My name is Lindsey Gwozdz. I am a fellow for open education at the New England Board of Higher Education, which is located in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm delighted to be here today with my colleague and co-author, Dr. Virginia Clinton-Lisell, the University of North Dakota. So today, as Jenny mentioned, we're going to be sharing formally, sort of for the first time, our published peer review results on understanding student experiences of renewable and traditional assignments. The way that Virginia and I have kind of constructed this session is I will be providing a little bit of context about the New England Board of Higher Ed, the program that we put on for faculty, and the research that we conducted on student experiences at the end of that program. So without further ado, let me just get everything up. Okay, so I'll be saying NEBHE a lot. So NEBHE just stands for the New England Board of Higher Ed. It's a mouthful. NEBHE's a lot easier. So the New England Board of Higher Ed is located in Boston, Massachusetts. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes greater education opportunities and services for the residents of New England, and it's more than 250 colleges and universities. Each New England state is represented on the New England Board of Higher Education by 8 delegates, leaders of education, business, and government who are appointed by their state's governors and legislative leadership. NEBHE works across the 6 New England states to help leaders assess, develop, and implement sound education practices and policies of regional significance, to promote regional cooperation and programs that encourage the efficient use and sharing of educational resources, and to strengthen the relationship between higher education and the economic well-being and quality of life in New England. NEBHE regularly convenes top leaders and decision makers from P-12 and higher education, industry, government, and the nonprofit sector, creating the critical cross-sector conversations that lead to change, collaboration, alignment, and innovation. We work closely with our peers from the 3 other regional compacts under, as Jenny mentioned, the National Consortium for Open Educational Resources, or NCOER, and we're delighted that our friends at MHEC have invited us to share this research with you. So to give you a little bit of background how this manifested, so we were granted a grant from the Hewlett Foundation, and NEBHE decided to focus on 3 grant objectives. So we convened our regional advisory board, who are, it's comprised of really amazing leaders in the Northeast involved in the open education community. And they helped us identify these 3 themes or areas that we could look at. And they were to extend pedagogical flexibility. So faculty in our region expressed they knew a lot about OER and how to use OER, but they didn't really understand how the licensing, the Creative Commons structure of open educational resources could actually help change and improve their pedagogy, help them diversify their own curriculum that they're using, and to actually help students feel empowered as contributors to the academic scholarly conversation. The second area is to explore student success. So kind of like once we help faculty reach that point of collaborating with their students, how do we measure and look at student impact on practices like open pedagogy? How is it impacting our students' experiences? And then finally, they asked us to engage our key leadership. So how can we connect? How can NEBHE act as an agent to connect our practitioners on the ground to the policymakers, the people at the top, the senior leadership, the legislators? How can we help those folks understand how to best support our practitioners? So obviously today, I think you can kind of assume that we're focusing on talking about this objective from our grant. So exploring student success. So how does open pedagogy impact student learning and success? So we wanted to know more specifically, what is the impact on the learning experiences of students when they have the opportunity to participate in the co-creation of their own learning resources through renewable assignments? So I recognize that some of you on the call today or anyone watching at a future date may not know exactly what I mean when I say renewable assignment. So what is a renewable assignment? A renewable assignment is an assignment or activity in which students are invited to openly license and publicly share the artifact that is created, which has value beyond the student's own learning. So this definition comes from Wiley and Hilton, but many other scholars in the field also have developed their own definitions and ideas about what a renewable or non-disposable assignment might look like. Those scholars include Rajiv Jhangiani, Robin DeRosa, Catherine Cronin, Maha Bali, etc. But if we're working with Wiley and Hilton's definition, a lot of you may be saying a renewable assignment, okay, so it's something that students participate in and it has value beyond their own experience, beyond the confines of their own classroom walls. Well, that sounds a lot like other educational theories that, maybe educators have worked with in the past. Constructivist learning, constructionist learning, community engaged learning, lots of through lines in this, but this chart really is helpful, I think, to demonstrate the kind of final step that distinguishes between this idea of open pedagogy and a renewable assignment. You can see the last column, it states the artifact, so whatever the student or students are creating or co-creating is openly licensed. So when I say that, I mean it has a Creative Commons license that allows the end user, so downstream users, to do a lot more with it than traditionally copyrighted material. So it allows them to share openly, to retain their own personal copies. It allows them to revise and remix the content. We could have a whole webinar on Creative Commons, but so that gives you kind of a basic understanding of what we are talking about today when we say understanding students' experiences of renewable versus traditional assignment. So a renewable assignment is something that is constantly being built upon, potentially semester after semester, by different groups of students or participants, versus a traditional assignment, which might look like a final exam or some kind of research paper that the student, either completes alone or potentially within a group. They hand in to their professor, and that's kind of the end of it. It gets graded, they get the result, and they move on with their educational career. we call it disposable because it often physically does end up in the trash. So we decided we wanted to look at this a little bit closely, like how our students experiencing this, but we wanted to do it in a way that was more controlled. And so we knew that all of the students in our study would be getting kind of hopefully a similar education from their faculty in terms of the language that we're using, renewable assignment, open pedagogy, Creative Commons. So we convened a regional faculty community of practice. And our intent behind this was, again, our regional advisory board said, hey, we understand that faculty want to learn more about the pedagogical flexibility of open licenses. And, you could maybe do this through professional development. So we said, okay, we will convene a faculty community of practice, which we did. We had, we opened a call and we had 8 participants, 1 from each of the 6 New England states. And we also decided to extend participation to both New York and New Jersey, which those 2 states aren't affiliated with one of the 4 regional compacts in the US, but they do excellent work in open ed. And so we really love to invite them anytime we can in our conversations. So we wanted to make sure that we could look at student experiences at lots of different kinds of institutions and in lots of different kinds of disciplines. So we had 8 faculty members. We had, I think, 7 or 8, I think 8 different disciplines represented, ranging from biology, criminal justice, English, social work, education, and there's a few others that I'm forgetting, but you can see, get my point. We had a wide range because we also wanted to say this can be done in any discipline. It's going to look very different in every discipline, but it can be done. And we also had various kinds of institutions. So we had 3 community colleges, 2 publics, and 3 publics and 2 independents. So what we look to do with this group of faculty is that we wanted to provide them with professional development on how to engage their students in this concept of open pedagogy and renewable assignments. But we wanted to do that in a more meaningful and intentional way of looking at this through the lens of social justice. And so we relied heavily on Lambert's 3 R's, the redistributive, recognitive, and representational justice. So our faculty members were hearing this all the time. The syllabus is at the bottom of this, and I think Mary was going to share it in the chat. So if you wanted to take a look, it's licensed CC BY. We only ran it once, so I would be delighted if someone took it and revised it and made it better, because we haven't really had the chance to do this. But regardless, we offered a webinar series for our 8 participants. So they were required to attend these sessions that you see up on the board. We had amazing community members like Jasmine Roberts-Cruz, Heather Maselli, Robin DeRosa. We had Will Cross and Stacey Katz, and I know I'm forgetting a few others, but and we open these up to the public. So I hope that some of you are able to attend, but if not, we have the link at the bottom as well. They're on the NEBHE webpage and you can view them anytime. And the final thing we did with them, we met every other week with these folks. We had really, really good conversations, looked at readings, but we did a lot of practical things with them too. So in addition to the webinar series, we had an individual workshop with Cable Green from Creative Commons. It was really fantastic. It was an opportunity for these faculty who are like pretty comfortable with OER, and they had gone through some Creative Commons training with me, and they had an opportunity to actually look at what their course syllabus was going to look like, what their renewable assignment was going to look like, and share those with Cable and say, hey, can you help me out with this? Like, what about this? Can I use this? How can I use this? And it was a really fantastic opportunity for these folks. So again, the idea behind me sharing this is helping you understand the context behind the research that's about to come. So all of these faculty members had the same training. They were sharing what they were doing in class, getting feedback from their peers and from myself. And it was a really wonderful professional development opportunity for these 8 individuals who then went on to have a renewable assignment in the class. And I'm going to hand it over to Virginia now because she's actually going to jump in and get into a little bit more of the research. But I hope that was helpful to provide a little bit of context.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lindsey, for the explanation of the background that we did our research study in and the importance of open education and social justice, which is something we considered in our research. So we wanted to have some data to better understand what are students really experiencing with renewable assignments compared to traditional assignments. So we think that they're more motivating. We think that they offer these pivotal opportunities for representational justice, but what do the students actually think? So we surveyed the students in the colleges and universities that you see here who had a faculty member who went through the workshop and implemented a renewable assignment. In the survey, we asked them to indicate their level of motivation based on what's called self-determination theory. So how much autonomy they have, how much relatedness did they experience, and did they feel competent while engaging with the renewable assignment? And we asked them to compare those experiences to that of doing a traditional assignment. We gave some examples of exams and quizzes and papers that nobody reads outside of the class. So if you can see on the next screen here, in order to compare renewable assignments and traditional assignments, we conducted paired sample t-tests for each of the subscales related to what's known as intrinsic motivation. So these are all aspects of being motivated for the sake of the task and the experience of the task, as opposed to external motivation, which is for a grade or financial reward or some kind of benefit. And across the board, you can see that students indicated better experiences with renewable assignments than with traditional assignments. So in terms of autonomy, you see less perceived pressure, but more choice. You see competence is a little bit higher. Pride is a little bit higher, also related to competence, and that relatedness is quite a bit higher. Also, students reported finding that their renewable assignments were just more interesting and enjoyable. So across these measures, this all indicate more intrinsic motivation for renewable assignments than for traditional assignments. Representational justice is equitable opportunities for self-expression by historically underserved and marginalized groups of people. Renewable assignments may be designed as opportunities for students to create materials that express their identities and tell their stories. This allows for materials about groups to be created by students identifying as members of these groups. A measure of representational justice was developed for the study for both renewable and traditional assignments, using items such as those seen on the screen here. As you can see from this graph, students perceived notably higher representational justice with renewable than traditional assignments. We were also curious about students publicly sharing their work. They were encouraged to do so, but it was not required. So we asked them if they shared publicly. And as you can see, most students did share publicly. We asked students what were their reasons for publicly sharing, and we saw that students tended to want to publicly share because they saw their work as valuable. They wanted to be able to help other people, whether those other people were future students, fellow students, the community, other professors, but they didn't just want it to, as this one student said, virtually disappear. They wanted it to live on because of their hard work on it. We did have one student indicate that they said it was a requirement for class, which it was not supposed to be a requirement for class. So that shows a need for clear communication about that. And then asking students about why they didn't publicly share. Common reasons were just a feeling of shyness and being uncomfortable. That their work was really personal, so they didn't want to share it with the public in general. And others commented that because they needed a group consensus in order to publicly share, they would have been comfortable publicly sharing, but they didn't get others in their groups to consent to share it. So we conducted between samples tests. So this is looking at 2 different groups to look at differences in motivation only for the renewable assignment between students who opted to publicly share and those who did not. Overall, motivation levels were pretty much the same. However, students who publicly shared reported higher levels of competence and relatedness than students who did not publicly share. This could be interpreted that students who publicly shared felt that they had the sufficient skills and knowledge to do well on the renewable assignment and likely viewed it as quality work. In terms of relatedness, this may be due to the collaborative nature of renewable assignments. Students who related well with their peers likely had more group cohesion and were better able to decide as a group to publicly share their work. We looked at differences in perceived representational justice in the renewable assignment for those who publicly shared and those who did not. Just a reminder that representational justice is equitable opportunities for self-expression by historically underserved peoples and groups. So as you can see, students who publicly shared reported higher levels of representational justice. This could be interpreted that students who felt they could express their identities in the renewable assignment wanted to take advantage of an opportunity to share their experience with others. Another aspect of social justice is recognitive justice, which is recognition and respect for cultural differences through diversity and inclusion in course materials. A measure of recognitive justice for the materials in the course was developed, and a sample of the items are on this slide. We had expected that students who do not see themselves in their course materials may feel that their identities are not respected and may be dissuaded from sharing the renewable assignments. However, from the graph, we actually see that the reverse is true, with students who publicly shared their materials reporting lower levels of perceived recognitive justice in their existing course materials than students who did not publicly share. This could be interpreted that students were more motivated to publicly share their work if they perceived the existing materials as inadequate in recognitive justice. They may have felt more desire to publicly share in order to have their work improve the diversity of available materials. And we also looked at how well students understood copyright and Creative Commons, how well they felt that privacy was explained to them, and the potential value of their work outside of the course. As you can see, these were fairly similar. So it does not appear that students' perceived understanding of copyright was an issue. It wasn't that students were confused about the copyright. As you can see, these are fairly high, that students who publicly shared fully understood privacy, as well as students who did not publicly share. And in terms of value outside of the class, these were both rated pretty high for both students who publicly shared and those who did not. And it didn't seem that there was any real difference there. So we also asked students to just share, overall, what were their thoughts. Overall, students had positive comments about renewable assignments. They appreciated the opportunity to be creative, to be able to highlight and signal boost, as it's said on social media, the work of individuals who have been historically underserved and underrepresented in higher education. Some students commented that, it was kind of confusing, that they didn't quite understand why, but then they found that it paid off, and that having the renewable assignment really got them to learn the material. And they see it, the opportunity for a renewable assignment, as something to go beyond just their own learning, but to think about how their work can benefit others. We didn't have many students report demographics, so we were unable to make comparisons based on student identities. These are the demographics that were reported, showing that there were a range of identities represented in the sample. If you would like to see our materials, so our survey, it is available on Open Science Framework. And a link to the article should be in the chat. Now we'll open it up for Q&A.
Thanks, Virginia.
So this is Jenny. I have been monitoring the Q&A, and I haven't received too many. I haven't received questions yet. That doesn't mean that people aren't still thinking about them and working on them. I'm interested in. I know that you gathered this data and did this work a few semesters ago. What's happening with some of those same instructors since then? I mean, I can imagine there are some interesting stories and insights.
Yeah, I know specifically Dr. Suzanne Roman Marmo. I always mix up her last name, but she was at Sacred Heart, and I think she just started at Fairfield University in Connecticut, or will be starting there. So she was our faculty member of social work, and Suzanne has been incredibly involved since our participation in the broader open education community. So I hope some of you have bumped into Suzanne. I know she just participated in a webinar with Anna Kamani helped put on for the Independent Council, I think, sharing how her students are still working on websites that were created by this initial cohort of students on different disciplinary topics within their field of study. So I know she had both undergraduate students and graduate students working on this. I don't know if together or separately, but I've certainly kept up with Suzanne. I know we've had a few faculty members retire since this, and I mean, since COVID, we haven't had too much contact, but yeah, certainly I've seen some names continue to pop up, especially Suzanne and Dan. Gosh, I'll forget his name. He's at Thomas College in Maine. He participated in this, and both Dan and his institution have been really, really involved in the open education movement. Dan teaches business, and I think he was teaching the ethics of business course that he decided to use a renewable assignment in here. And his students were really excited they also created websites to build these websites to kind of just like help diversify their curriculum, because their business curriculum that they were using was very Eurocentric. So I know he's continued to kind of work on that with students.
That's great.
Thanks,
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions that have come through. first of all, was funding the study a problem?
Say that again, was funding
Was
this?
funding study, yes, the question is, was funding the study a problem? I'm not really sure what all is meant there.
So we were really grateful to receive funding from the Hewlett Foundation. So we did use that to bring on Virginia to help us with this research. And we used a decent amount of the funding to provide student incentives to participate in the survey, because that always helps. So we gave them gift cards, $10 Amazon gift cards if they completed the survey.
And they were linked to request the gift card. They went to a different survey link. So their gift card information and their survey responses were not.
Sure.
Funded.
Yep. Thank you. Someone asked, what was Cable's workshop presentation for your faculty like?
Like I mentioned, it was really intimate. There was only like the 9 of us plus Cable. So basically I asked the faculty ahead of time to come prepared with very specific questions for Cable, specific to the assignment that they were developing. So it was a lot of pointed questions. You know, I really want to use this resource. I'm a little uncertain about fair use still. Can you walk me through that? Which is a huge thing in higher education anyway. Like faculty need a lot of support in that. So yeah, it was just really useful. And Cable's a great colleague, and we were very excited that he was able to do that for us.
Thank you. So on that note, sorry to plug a MHEC thing here, but for those of you who don't know, MHEC has a contract with Creative Commons. And if you are in a MHEC state or a state belonging to any of the other compacts, so basically not New York, not Pennsylvania, and not New Jersey, any other state, you are going to be able to access the MHEC contract and get a 15% discount on any Creative Commons training. It really brings the price, especially of that faculty course and those librarian courses, down to something that's very, very achievable and attainable. Mary has put the link for that information into the chat. All right, we have a ton of questions now, so here we go. First of all, I actually would love an example of what a renewable assignment looks like and how to create them. This is new to me. I suppose I can Google it, but if that is beyond the scope of the webinar, but do you have anything you can share or describe?
Yeah,
I actually have a faculty handbook with examples, some of which were used in this, or a faculty guide, thanks to the North Dakota University system supporting me in developing this.
Nice.
So I will just put that in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's a very ugly link.
That's all right. Well, do you know, one of the questions that is similar to that, in that same vein, is, have you encountered creative ways to use renewable assignments in introductory history courses?
Introductory history courses. I personally don't know of faculty members at my institution or in the NEBHE region that are doing this, but I am happy to look into it. And if you, I know the Open Education Network is, I don't know if they've launched it, but I did see, I had a tour of it the other day. They have a new portal, an open pedagogy portal, where faculty will be able to go and, like, just like the Open Education Network's library, the textbook library, you can sort by discipline. You'll be able to do that in the new OpenPed portal. So you could go to history and see an actual example of a faculty member doing this. You could see the logistics of the assignment. So let me see if I can kind of poke around and find that, but certainly we can get that to you.
We did have Kevin Corcoran from Connecticut say Western Connecticut State University does. So I don't know if that's specifically pertaining to the history question or just some examples. But thank you, Kevin. Do you have a, Kevin, if you can give us a link, that'd be awesome. And then we've got Emma Schmidtke offering in the chat a link that says there may be an idea for an introductory history course here. It's in the Clio. All right.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma.
Excellent.
And
Thank
I
you.
also, Jenny, I put one in the link. My colleague teaches gen ed science at my institution. So
Wonderful.
her link in there.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Another question. How did you approach the problem of students being biased by the novelty and enthusiasm about these new efforts? Do you think a study that compares students who have not been exposed to renewable assignments prior to these questions would be a good addition to scholarship, like a pre-test, post-test design?
I'm going to let Virginia answer that. It's really interesting.
Well, it's tricky because renewable assignments are something where if students hadn't encountered them before, they wouldn't be able to respond to these items. And it can also be pre-test, post-tests are, always a good idea when feasible, but there is difficulty when evaluating a new initiative that people don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And you may see just really, what we call noisy responses where the data just are not interpretable because students are misunderstanding or
Sure.
because of renewable energy, which.
Yep, exactly.
And we did in our survey, we were really mindful to remind them what a renewable assignment was. And we asked the faculty members to really try to use that language throughout the semester. So the students were, like, oh yeah, that's what they're talking about.
Great. Thank you. Well, so here's a question I think is a good one. Are examples of the assignments located within the shared materials and those links provided? And I think that is true. Crystal was asking that. Also, have additional faculty at the participating institutions for the study adopted renewable assignments? That's always what I think is the power of seeing what
seeing what your faculty peers are doing and hey, I want to do that. I can speak to that one. My colleague at Roger Williams University, which is in Rhode Island, where I am located, she's been doing this for years, but word kind of spread. And I had so many faculty members coming to me being like, hey, what's Heather doing and how do I do that? And what kind of support from the library do I need? And what kind of support do my students need? So I've actually seen a huge uptick in my instruction. I'm a librarian. Just coming in to do Creative Commons sessions and teaching them about their own copyrights. It's been a very cool transition in my own career to have faculty not just coming to me for show them the databases, but to be doing more meaningful things.
Right.
So yeah, it certainly spreads once faculty what their peers are doing.
I bet. Okay, another question. I'm curious whether the results of this study would shift for students editing existing materials in coming years, as opposed to creating some for the first time. Did any of your data show student experiences with this?
We weren't able to disaggregate based on the specific renewable assignment that they did. Part of the demographics section that most of the students skipped was also questions about what institution and which instructor they had.
Got it.
So we just simply didn't have enough usable data to answer that question. But that is an important question.
Sure.
Absolutely.
They went. This person wants to know: did you impose any parameters on the renewable assignments? Were there any?
We didn't really. We kind of left that up to the faculty. The things we really asked for them to, the parameters we asked them to stick to were like definitions of renewable assignment, making sure that students had choice and agency. There was no requirement. Like obviously they had to do the assignment, but the public sharing piece was not, like, we made sure those student privacy and intellectual property right pieces were in place, those ethical concerns.
Great.
Other than that, I mean, we had so many different disciplines and institutions. We
it would have been difficult. Yeah. Next question. What were the 3 aspects of social justice you examined? I think I missed one. And how were they chosen?
So we used Sarah Lambert's framework of social justice for open education. And she discusses representational justice, which is the opportunity to express based on one's unique experiences. Recognitive, where your identities are noted and acknowledged in existing material. And then redistributive, in which people who have historically not had access to materials have barriers to that access removed. So open educational resources, by a function of the fact that you don't need to pay for access to them, support redistributive justice. So that's something of, an assumption when we do open education, is that that's a bit of a given. So that's why we dug into the recognitive and representational aspects.
Sure.
Yeah, and I will say that while these 8 faculty members were a requirement for them to participate was that they had, used OER before, they were, familiar enough that they could kind of just jump right in to the next level. But there wasn't a requirement by us that they had to use an OER to instruct. Most of them did, but I know like one faculty member had like a $25 reader, like she needed the students to buy for something. So we didn't really restrict that.
Thank you. How manageable or time consuming was the assignment implementation for the faculty?
I mean, you'd have to ask them. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I think, I think it's safe to say it was first time around, it's fairly intimidating and time consuming. I don't think there's any sugarcoating that.
Right.
So we did this in like a tiered program. So like the spring 2021 was all learning. They learned, we met as a group. The summer, they worked with me individually to really make sure their assignment was ready to go. And then in the fall, they tested out their renewable assignment. So we tried to make it as manageable as possible, but it's still time consuming.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was reading the rest of this. This person who asked the question said, yes, I've heard from a couple of faculty doing them that they are worthwhile, but exhausting.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Another question. Would you please elaborate about the biweekly group meetings?
Sure.
Yes.
Let me dig back in my brain 2 years. Yes, we met bi-weekly, and the syllabus that was shared, I don't remember exactly kind of like what order, but we talked a lot about, they were an hour long each meeting, and all faculty were expected to read ahead of the meeting. And we just had really good conversations because educators don't always have that space to just talk to one another about research that's coming out that's new to them, or, hey, this seems really cool, but how would this apply in biology? Can you help me out?
Right.
It was just a lot of dialogue. It was really, really wonderful, actually.
That's great. And how long were the meetings?
They were an hour.
All right. If you had it to do over again, what would you change and what would you not change?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece that we took away from our biggest learning experience that we took away from doing the faculty community of practice was there was a lot of social justice work that I think really would have benefited from having an external consultant come in to navigate some of those conversations with me. I mean, everyone that participated was really, really interested. They needed more than I was able to give them as someone who is a librarian and who, is well-versed in open pedagogy and Creative Commons. And I know a lot about social justice, but that is certainly not my area of expertise. And so, when our president and I debriefed, we said that's something we would certainly do differently. I think it's really important to have another person there to help lead those conversations.
On the research end, I would change the language for the instructions for the demographics, because I said something to the effect, which is my typical boilerplate language for demographics, the words, please answer the following questions so we can describe our sample. You do not need to answer if you do not wish to. or something to that effect. And it seemed that a lot of students just exited the survey at that point. And they actually missed the opportunity for a gift card because of that. So just to be a
Aw.
little clear, to at least perhaps to have a prefer not to respond option where they're at least going through and deciding item by item what they want to respond to. But it was a little surprising given that students provided really thoughtful feedback in the open-ended items and clearly showed engagement and interest, that there was this huge drop off.
Yeah.
Also, ideally, I would have liked to been able to, just as somebody who's trained in psychology, there's a lot of emphasis on the psychometrics of measures. So to conduct just a study testing the reliability and the validity of the measure we used, I believe it turned out to be quite useful, but.
Yeah.
That's always nice to have a nice internal R, I think, if I'm digging back into my head
Yes.
from many
Yes.
years ago. Yes.
And it not being a large sample, we were not able to
Exactly.
use
Right.
sophisticated factor analysis or anything like that.
Yeah. Got it. So the question, there's a question that says, are you submitting the study for publication in an open journal? And I know the answer. You already have, and it's already published. So do you guys want to just quickly verbally share?
Yeah, Virginia, if you can pop that in the chat again, we published in the Journal of College Teaching, I believe.
It's just called College Teaching, yes.
College Teaching, yeah.
And
Which is not an open access journal, but we paid to make sure this article is open access. I think, we thought a lot about where to publish, but I'll speak from my opinion that we wanted to reach like a different subset of people, like college teaching read by a completely different group, like open educators aren't typically in there.
Right.
So
now I thought about that a lot because, we have in our collaborations, there's a lot of research that's coming out. And though you want to support open scholarship in the open journals, you also want to reach the folks who aren't there yet. So
absolutely
get that.
Yeah. So, we were grateful that that journal has an option to make.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Obviously they robbed us, but you do what you got to do.
Not an inexpensive option, but
No.
it's something like nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, were there incentives for the educators to participate?
Yeah, there was a small monetary incentive. I don't remember exactly. I think it was $1,500. I don't remember. It was a few years, but that rings a bell.
Another question.
And also, I will just
ahead.
say, Jenny, I've also written a few letters for a few of those folks for like tenure and promotion. So I know that's not monetary incentive, but
even more valuable.
Certainly helps. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you identify faculty and what requirements did they have to meet?
Sure. So I know we put out a call on all of your typical websites where open educators are. We did like the OEN listserv, the Spark listserv, Creative Commons listserv. The requirements were that they needed to be teaching at an institution in the Northeast. So the Northeast is the 6 New England states, New York and New Jersey. And they also needed to have a baseline understanding of open education. Like they needed to have at least like used an OER in class before and to understand the concept of what that was. They didn't need to be experts, but like we needed them to have that knowledge so we could help them make that leap from adoption to co-creation with students.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you share examples of renewable assignments created for library instruction? Is that included in any of the things you've shared?
I haven't shared it yet, but I did just co-create something with Mandy Gwozdz. Is she do you know where she's in the Midwest somewhere? I don't know if she's at Indiana, but she's a librarian, and we just co-created. She did a podcast series, and then underneath that, I added a few lessons for library instruction on like how to teach Creative Commons to students, how to teach certain things. So let me find that and I'll pop it in the chat, or if not, we can check it out afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, they can follow up offline.
Great.
Let's see. did you consult with institutional researchers at all in the research process, and how did you do that?
Are you talking about like IRB? Because
I'm not sure what's being asked here, so were they part of your research design? Did you interact with institutional researchers at each institution maybe, or did you or did they not provide you with any data or anything?
Yeah, I'm going to let Virginia answer that because she helped with most of our research design.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're muted, Virginia.
It's 2023. I should know better. We worked with the IRBs of each institution as well as Lindsey's and my institutional IRBs. So we have 10 different IRBs involved in this study, which is a personal record. And we didn't involve institutional stakeholders beyond that.
Yeah, that makes sense. You already had plenty. So in the discussion section of the article, you talk about following up with qualitative approaches. How do you imagine that might be done?
Virginia?
So we did ask students in the survey if they would be open to be contacted for an interview. We went through the IRB process. We found a qualitative expert in open education, Tanya Spilivoy, to work with us. Unfortunately, none of the students we reached out to responded to the request for an interview. So it does not appear we'll be able to do a qualitative approach with this specific sample. I'm not a qualitative expert, but I definitely know that we need more inquiry in that area. So
sure.
Absolutely.
All right. I don't think there are any other open questions, and we are near time.
Could I
Yes.
share an announcement quickly?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm one of the primary researchers for the Open Education Group, and we are seeking applications for our 2023-2024 research fellowships. So if you are an early career researcher, and we look at that very broadly, please consider thinking about how your ideas for open education could be tested and explored in a research study. So fellows will receive financial support to attend open education in 2023 and 24. Article processing charges will be covered, and they will receive a stipend for each article they submit.
Thanks, Virginia.
And I put the link in the chat there, or you can email me.
Thank you. And that is a wonderful program that's been going on. How many years now?
We first, well, I shouldn't say it was first started. I actually just organized all of our publications by year, so this shouldn't be too hard to look up. 2015.
Nice.
That's good. Yep. So thank you. Yeah, I encourage everyone to do that. If any of you who are who received the NEBHE newsletter, we did put all of the information about the fellowships in that too. So there should be links there. So anything else? This is just, thank you for doing this. This
Absolutely.
is fabulous. I'm excited to see what the next phase of the research will be, and bummer that the follow-up, the qualitative follow-up didn't happen, but students move on, that's okay. Yeah, exactly. But just, it's so exciting and so transformative. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks everyone for coming today.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.